Hello and welcome to episode 47 of Prosperity by the Pint. I'm your host, Brice Carter, certified financial planner, chartered financial consultant, certified investment management analyst, and self-proclaimed millennial money expert. This is the podcast where we talk about money, investing, business, and life success, all while having a cold beer. This episode, the cold beer of choice, is from Alaskan Brewing Company. Alaskan Brewing Company. Brewed and bottled in Juneau, Alaska, and it is their blonde ale brewed with honey. I have not had this. I've had Alaskan Brewing Company before, but never their blonde ale. So cheers. That is quite nice. It's very refreshing. It's extremely light beer. It's borderline water, but it is light and refreshing, and feels like one of those bottles of beer that you should drink after like doing a physical activity like jogging or biking or something like that. This week, I wanted to talk about the cost of kids. What is the cost of having a kid? The reason I wanted to talk about this, well, my wife and I are expecting. If you have not heard, now you have. So we have number 2 coming our way. And I came across an article, probably because other kid-related things I was reading, that said, and this is according to a study by Health Affairs, the average new mother with insurance will pay $4,500 for labor and delivery. That's their out-of-pocket costs, even if they have insurance. And so I came across that article, and I was like, wow, that's actually, that's a lot of money, $4,500. For median family income, which is roughly $50,000, that's 10% of your income for having a kid, and that's if you have insurance. And many people do not have insurance, as we know. And so that is not just a statistical outlier in the sense of the fact that that's a large number, but when compared to other industrialized countries, in Finland it costs like $60 to have a kid. Now that comes at a cost in of itself, taxes and liberties and different things like that. But $4,500 is no joke. That's a lot of money to have kids. And birth rates have been declining, so I'm wondering, maybe is the cost of raising and having a child part of that? So this led me to realize that, I guess I did not realize, but led me to want to talk about the total cost of having and raising a kid or kids. So personally, I will tell you about my experiences. Corey and I, my wife and I, we got a bill for like $800, so our insurance covered a great deal. Now, I believe that a big part of that was our deductible was already covered for some other stuff throughout the year, so it wasn't like we our deductible was met. And so once your deductible's met, a lot more is covered. But when you're through that, it's really common to have a $3,000 deductible in America. And so if you haven't met your deductible yet, and then you have the kid, all of a sudden your deductible's met, you get the bill for the $3,000 plus whatever other overages. So we got a bill for about $800 when we had our first child. And then when we had our child, I will tell you, prior to, we used to eat out all the time. It's go out, I'd have 2 beers at dinner. She'd have a glass of wine. We'd have a nice date night every Friday and Saturday, maybe once or twice during the week. And that doesn't happen anymore. Have you tried going out to dinner with a 2-year-old? It is difficult. You can do it, but it's not the relaxing, nice, peaceful evening you were looking for. You're better off just to pick some stuff up and bring it home if you just don't feel like cooking, because it's not relaxing. It is stressful. The child wants to get up, child wants to get down, sit with mommy, sit with daddy, sit with mommy, sit with daddy. There's a jar of candy at the reception desk. I want a sucker. I love my daughter, but she is difficult to eat out with. So we save money on not eating out as much. Therefore, we save money on alcohol. Now, in contrast to that, we're spending a lot more money on, not a lot more, we're starting to spend money, which happens to be a lot, on diapers, formula, college savings, and kid clothes, and daycare, and. You see what I'm saying? Now, the average cost of raising a child to age 17, according to the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, is $233,000. This does not include college, of course, which is, for a 4-year university, you're looking at somewhere right now about $85,000 in today's dollars. So 85,000 adjusted for inflation, put that about 18 years, you're roughly looking at about $170,000. Don't hold me to that math. That's off the top of my head. Now, the studies of this, the authors of this study by Health Affairs found much of so according to my theory on the deductible, much of the $4,500 was covering deductible. But the biggest thing was that 45% of pregnancies and births were unplanned. So therefore, when you're signing up for your medical plan, by the way, 45%, like I said this number, and the person filming right now, hi, Allie, hello, was like, what, 45%? Yeah, 45% of pregnancies are unplanned. So if you're looking at, and you're picking your health insurance, and you're going to try and have a child, you might pick a different plan than if you're single or married and not planning to have children. And depending on the plan you make or you pick, might end up saving you a lot of money. So, when you're looking at a situation where 45% are unplanned, I think that huge deductible number could probably be avoided in a lot of scenarios if they were planned. But also, fun fact I got from this, the number one cause of hospitalization for women in America is childbirth. I was like, really? That is shocking. And then I started to think about it. It's like, well, there's not that many car accidents today. There's not that many heart attacks, and so on and so forth. I mean, that makes sense, but still, wow. The number one reason for hospitalization by women in America is childbirth. So the USDA report on raising kids brought up a lot of interesting data points. So the first should not be really that surprising. I believe I've talked about this before, but location matters a lot. So the most expensive place to raise a child is in the Northeast. So you're looking at, New York, Connecticut, Maryland, New Hampshire, New Jersey, etc. It's not surprising. Midwest is some of the most affordable places. And the data indicated that the biggest changes over time has been the cost of education and childcare. And so if you start to think about that a little bit, the first thing being education. Now, if you're in major metropolitan areas, I have no experience with this, but my understanding is that some of the public schools have a little bit of leave you desiring some more. You want a better education for your child, so you end up sending them to private school. The other thing, and this is what I think is far more interesting, is, and I've talked about this many times, is it's not surprising when you look at it, but from the 1960s until today, we have really gone from a single income household with a breadwinner, usually the male, and to now a dual income household where men and women are both going to work to support and provide for the family. Therefore, there's a need for childcare. And so the cost of childcare was 2% in the 1960s. And on average today, that's about 16%. So the fact that mom and dad are both working has caused the cost of raising a child to really go up dramatically over the last half century. And so, the flip side of that is because both mommy and dad are working, theoretically, both mom and dad working would be more money than just dad working back in 1960 in real dollar terms. And I don't know whether that's the truth or not. I will tell you, I know that there are a lot of situations in which parents look at it and say, okay, after childcare, because I'm not at home with the child, but I'm at work, I make barely more than what it costs to send the child to daycare today after taxes. And it's like, people are making that decision every day. And that's a tough thing to come up with. And so I'd love to see the cost of childcare come down over time, give parents more of an opportunity to stay home, or a single income household. I think that creates for stronger family bonds, but I'm not here to solve those problems. I'm just here to educate you. So the cost of raising a child is, as we talked about, $233,000. But how's that broken down? So the top expenses are housing. Now, if you think about housing, it takes more house to have a house full of kids than it just you and a spouse or just you, right? So 29% was was housing, 18% food, 16% care education, transportation 15%. I thought that one was weird. Like do you need who's spending that much on like transportation for their children? I mean, is that just the cost of gas from running them all over the place? I don't know. That seemed a little high to me. Healthcare 9% makes a lot of sense. Clothing 6%, miscellaneous 7%. What I thought was underscored here is, and I don't know, it probably is covered in miscellaneous, but hobbies and sports and after school activities, my God, can you spend a fortune on kids on that? Beer break. Like, I have clients and friends, their kids play hockey, and they go all over the place. I mean, you're paying for the ice time, you're paying for the equipment, you're paying for the travel, all of those things. That stuff adds up. So the cost of sports and after-school activities for your kids, I mean, that's super high. I just find it hard to believe that fits into that 7% category, but who knows? So I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from having kids. Kids are expensive, but so is, what's great is the joy of hearing them smile and say, daddy, daddy. It's worth it, right? It's just, it is expensive. It is what it is. But what you can do is do some planning around it. So the biggest expenses, right? Housing and food. I get it. You need to eat out and you need a place to sleep. That is what it is, right? However, what you can do is avoid the trap of being in too much house or too expensive of a house. And, buying too much house is honestly a huge problem. So I've talked about lenders being willing to lend too much to parents. But here's the thing is that when you're looking at a home, and I find people do this all the time, is they look at their home as an investment. Your home is not an investment. I get it. Real estate can be an investment. Real estate, we had Ed Constable on. Ed Constable talked about, investing in rentals and vacation rentals and monthly rentals and business rentals, commercial properties, all kinds of different things. But your primary residence is not an investment, because the fact of the matter is you're never going to sell your primary residence in order to pay your bills. And investments should be able to use to turn that capital into an income stream, right? Right. So your primary residence is not an investment. So if you're looking at it and saying, I can afford a $200,000 house, and then you find a house that's in a really good neighborhood where you want to be that's $300,000, and you justify it by saying, well, it's an investment. No, it's not. It's a $100,000 extra expense over and above what you would plan on purchasing because you think it's an investment. Primary residences are not houses, they are houses, are not investments. I guess the point to drive this home is that if you ever fill out a financial document that requires you to put in your net worth information, it always says, almost always, it says exclude primary residence from your net worth calculation, because it's an asset that you can't dispose of because you're going to end up replacing it with another asset in order to have a place to live. It's not an investment, it's expense. So that could help maybe shift your mentality a little bit to save a bit of money on your home purchase. Food, I'm not going to spend any time on this. You know whether you're spending too much money eating out or going to the movies and at the grocery store buying lobsters. I don't know. If you spend too much on this particular topic. College costs. The biggest thing I'm going to tell you here is we started saving for Chloe, that's my daughter, for her college education right after she was born. And the reason being is you start to get compound interest going into effect, right? So $100 that earns 10% is now $110 that can earn 10%, which 10% of $110 is $11, right? So compound interest works over time, which means the earlier that you start to save, the more money ultimately that you should have at the end date of needing that asset pool. So what I want you to think about is if you have kids right now and they're, 10 years away from college, start saving now, not 9 years, not 8 years, not 7 years, not 6 years, so on. The earlier you start saving for any particular thing that you need to invest for, whether it's retirement or college, the better off you're going to be. That's this episode of Prosperity by the Pint. Don't forget to subscribe, YouTube, iTunes, Facebook, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you are, wherever you're listening, that's where we are. Cheers. Have a good day. The topics that I discuss in this podcast are meant to be general information and educational only. I'm not giving you specific advice because I don't know you personally. In order to give you specific advice, you should work with an advisor or someone that can learn your specific situation and give you advice that applies to you. If I talk about a specific security, please keep in mind I'm not recommending that security. And don't forget, investing involves risk. When you invest, there's always the possibility of losing capital, which is why you should consult with a qualified, licensed financial advisor prior to investing.